fellow citizens, I don't comment when things happen anyhow. I have quite some patience and quite some tolerance. Levels of patience and tolerance are quite high, especially a guy like me who went through a lot to stand here as a head of state. I probably went through the worst discrimination any citizen can receive from his own or her own citizens. I went through the worst. Records are there. And when you experience what I've experienced, you learn to be patient. You learn to be tolerant. You also sometimes learn to ignore certain things until when it's right to speak or to say something or respond in a certain way. And I believe over years now, over months and days, putting all the things that have been going on together around this attack, insistent attack on national unity, on our heritage, on our unity in diversity, something we inherited from those that came before us. Some are gone. KK and his group are gone. Some are still alive, a very small number, freedom fighters. We have an obligation to address this issue squarely and not to skate around, driven on the platform or the understanding that no one, and really no one, should be allowed to divide this country. It's a heritage we are proud of. 72, 73 ethnic groups. Some will like to argue that now there are 70, no, some are close, there are 30. That doesn't matter. The message is that it's a heritage. When this country was put together as a republic, others came from the north, migrated from the north. Others migrated from the south. Others from the east, west. Others moved longer distances over many years. Others short. At the time the country was pronounced as independent Zambia, it did not matter how long you traveled to sit in this geography. 752,000 square kilometers of land, 8+1 neighbors. It doesn't matter what agreements existed with the BSA company, Cecil Rhodes, with the Crown of England, with anyone else. It did not matter. Announcement was made that this board of citizens, this board of people, from now on, going forward, will be called citizens of Zambia. Full stop. And the Constitution is very clear that there's no one citizen who is superior to the other. I repeat, there's no one citizen, not even a group, that is superior to others. Where's the reference point? The Constitution. It is there. In my difficult days, when others made it clear that I was not allowed to be President of Zambia, and that they will use everything at their disposal, all the force they had at their disposal, including the military at the time, my answer was dual. Two. One, I would say to those, go and change the Constitution. You don't want this fellow citizen to be head of state? Go and change the Constitution. It's the only justification that will allow you to talk that language, that divisive language. 2, you are not God. Therefore, you cannot say those things. And I maintain that posture. The rest is history. What has been happening in our country over years, over months, over days, is not acceptable. Divisive talk, adults meet, organized to meet, to spew hatred against fellow citizens, to sow seeds of divisions against fellow citizens. Indeed, that is weird. In a Christian country, inside the church, really? The sacred house of God, you are spewing hatred? You are proud to say that you are a violent man. You are a violent man inside the church. There's a contradiction in a Christian nation. And others are clapping. Honestly, we should say no to such things. To say these must stay there, those must stay there. What God put together, no one puts asunder. Honestly, adults, grown-ups, incredible. As your chief servant, I'm here to say that behavior, that language, proudly says, me, I can hate people, I'm violent. That's disgusting. To say the least, that's disgusting. From whichever angle you want to look at it, that's disgusting. And it should have no place in our society, in our country. And none of us should clap for such behaviors. None of us. We shouldn't teach children, our children, hatred. We should teach our children love and accommodation. That's what we should teach our children. If you are a responsible parent, you teach your children love, tolerance, diversity, unity in diversity. Honestly speaking. And I urge the people of Zambia, we should not clap for such. We should not encourage lunacy. That's lunacy. If our forefathers behaved like that, would have never had independence. Some of you are young. Political parties, we were a multi-party state at independence, not a one-party state. First election, there was no absolute winner to form government. 3 parties emerged. European Party, 2 liberation parties, UNIP and ANC. 2 out of these 3 needed to come together to form government, despite their differences in policies. UNIP under KK, ANC under Nkumbula. One was socialist orientated, one was market based. In national interest, they came together. That's great. That's how it should be. 60 years later, others are pulling away. No. We shouldn't teach our children bad manners at dinner tables, divisive and angry hearts. Cabinet met yesterday to arrest this issue and do it decisively. Cabinet met yesterday and resolved to amend all laws which flow out of the Constitution, amend all those laws that have to do with discrimination of this nature, as we have experienced in an ugly way, and bring about amendments that will stiffen penalties and make it unattractive for anyone to spew hatred against fellow citizens. I am here to stand, and I stand here, so to say, to reinforce that position. Again, I told you, don't misunderstand my patience to mean I'm unaware. No, that would be a grave mistake. Completely grave mistake. We are aware, we are monitoring. Those who orchestrated violence are missing something. I'm aware. Those who emulated the violent ones are also missing thuggery. I can see. I'm watching, I'm looking, as you are doing yourselves. But I'm here to say to you, that thuggery, that violence, even when old habits die hard, even when thugs mutate from one political party to another to continue their journey of violence, I'm here to tell you that that will not be allowed. That will not be tolerated. Absolutely not. If we need to reinforce the laws, we will do that. But I think for now, the laws that are there are very clear that violence is not part of us. And therefore, the police do not need my reminder. Law enforcement agencies is not there to negotiate. You are not there to negotiate whether to arrest somebody or to put them in. When they turn violent, they become thugs in public roads or in other places. You don't need the president to give you a call. You don't need the Minister of Home Affairs and Internal Security to give you a call to remind you to enforce the law. Let me draw the distinction. At that point, negotiations are only done in the communities about which law should be amended or reinforced. Choose your own language or expression. In Parliament, you negotiate, you reach out to other MPs, can we amend this law? But as for the police and other law enforcement, there is no negotiations. You just enforce the law. There's no negotiation. That's not your role. You want someone to negotiate, pass it to Parliament. And let the parliamentarians lobby each other. Yours is to enforce the law. If you fail to enforce the law, it will be an admittance of failure to perform your duties. You can't claim that if you get arrested, you will not vote for HH in 2026. Maybe I don't need your vote. I don't want to be a president who is produced by thugs and turn me into a thug. Icona. No. And anyone in politics, in the church, in the civil society, in the HH home, orchestrating, planning violence, you're on your own. I repeat what I've said. If the police are failing, I'll use the army.
All right, guys, that was the President of the Republic of Zambia. He was addressing the public regarding leaders and politicians who are preaching hatred and promoting violence within the population or within the citizens of Zambia. So the president is sending a stern warning, advising anybody who tries to promote violence or incite people to fight among each other. So the president is saying anybody who tries that will be prosecuted, and he is giving a stern warning that nobody should try and divide the people of Zambia. So it's so sometimes you just wonder why Africa always, instead of promoting their economy, developing their country and uniting for a good cause, every time there is a fight over who is leading the country. There's always a fight as to who is at the top of the leadership. And then you will quickly see regrouping on a tribal basis and saying it's our turn to lead, instead of uniting as one people. So this is the second country after Kenya to where the president declares that he might use the army to ensure there is order within the country. The president of Kenya already has used the army on ordinary citizens, and yet soldiers or the army are trained to fight in the jungle. They are not trained to deal with ordinary citizens. So this is the second country now where the president declares that he might end up using the army to bring order in the country. So it's a very bad trend where instead of developing the country, Africans are always so obsessed with leadership and it's our time to lead, it's our time to, because there is always that big disease which is yet to be controlled in Africa. I will call it disease in quotes because corruption is the biggest menace in Africa. So people will always fight to lead the country so that they can steal, because that disease in the name of corruption has never been tamed in Africa. There's no country in Africa, if I'm not wrong, which has managed to eliminate corruption even to the level of 90%. There's always corruption in Africa, and that's what has made it to lag behind in terms of development as compared to the rest of the world. We know Africa had challenges of colonial era and all that, but we have countries like Singapore, South Korea, whose economies were the same as most of the African countries after independence. But then, right now, their GDP is way ahead in comparison to the GDPs of the countries in Africa. So it's about the countries uniting and utilizing their resources effectively, avoid corruption and the infighting, which doesn't help anything. So this President Hichilema, came to power in the elections of 2021. And it reminds me that he faced similar struggles before winning the election, like the struggles which the President of Kenya, President William Ruto, faced before he won the elections of 2022. So both of them had similar struggles before they became presidents. One in 2021, another in 2022. So it's just few years down the line. And already both of them, President Ruto has already used the army to bring order in the country. Now President Hakainde Hichilema of Zambia is also threatening to use the army to bring order in the country. So those are striking resemblance which I noticed with these two leaders. And it is sometimes we are forced to think that actually this is one of the reasons why some young people decide to overthrow democratically elected leaders and take over the government because of this kind of fighting and confusion. And yet these are democratic governments. Like for example, Zambia has had 7 presidents after President Kenneth Kaunda retired in 1991. Kenya has had 5 presidents since independence. So these are democratic countries or nations, and yet they still don't get it. People continue fighting over resources instead of developing the country. Because now in the case of Hichilema, the losers, which is also the same as Kenya, I'll not use the word the losers, but the opposition always try to pull down the government of the day instead of criticizing positively. And that's the problem of governments in Africa or countries in Africa. The opposition always works to try and pull down the leading government instead of criticizing positively and supporting the government of the day. Because if they fail, the whole country fails. The same thing in Kenya. The opposition are still fighting up to now, and yet the president has been there in office for almost 3 years. But they are still fighting and still not recognizing the president. So opposition naturally should criticize positively, not being on a mission of pulling down the leading government in the hope that if the government crumbles, they are the ones who will take over the government. So sometimes I would even think country like Burkina Faso will even grow faster after the young captain overthrew the government. Because what is the purpose of being democratic and at the same time you keep on fighting each other? There is no time for development. But the captain in the Burkina Faso now is doing a lot of great work. He's doing great work now. And yet he's a young person. So Africa we will always see very weird stories about Africa because of such things. So this president is being forced to use the army simply because some opposition leaders are just trying to cause violence and tribal clashes within the population, which is wrong. So why would leaders go to an extent of forcing the president to use the army on its own people? It doesn't really give a good picture, considering that this is a Christian country. Zambia is majorly Christian population, and it's democratic at the same time. So it's so sad to see this president talking in such an emotional manner, because he obviously is not happy that his countries are about to go down with violence and all that in that manner, courtesy of its own leaders. And yet when the president acts, then there will be an outcry that is crushing the opposition. So that's the next thing. The moment the president starts to crack the whip, then there will be an outcry that now opposition is being fought and all that. So the day Africa recognizes that it doesn't matter who is leading the country, what matters is the constitution, strong institutions, and that unity as one people. At the moment there are all this infighting, Africa will never develop. Africa will never develop. Because what is the purpose of using the army on ordinary citizens? You are using your own army. Army is trained to operate externally or to confront external aggression. But now you are using the army to fight your own people, to fight internally. Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. So as long as we are seeing this, the president comes on a national TV and says that I'm going to use the army on locals, and it's not his wish. He has been forced to, because the problem with Africans is that we keep on pulling each other down. We are so happy to see your colleague fall down. You are so happy to see the other person fall down because of that jealousy. You think that the moment the other person fails, you succeed. It doesn't work that way. The day the country burns, everyone will burn. So until this mentality stops in Africa, we will never develop. Countries will advance. Countries will advance on infrastructure, automation, innovation, entrepreneurship. People will continue building skyscrapers and going to the moon. Now the target is going to the Mars, while we were still just not even able to manufacture just a tractor, just a simple tractor to use in our farms. We use the oxens to cultivate our lands because we cannot think. Unless we stop fighting each other, we will never progress. I was touched by this statement by President of Zambia, guys, and I said let me just comment about it. Thank you for being here. God bless you, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.